This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So primaries in a number of states yesterday that have some implications for November in South Carolina, in Virginia, in Nevada. The one incumbent Republican senator in the top 10 most vulnerable senators, according to some of the rankings, Dean Heller in Nevada. We now know who his Democrat challenger will be. But sort of the big story yesterday was former South Carolina governor, now congressman, now not going to be a congressman for much longer, Mark Sanford.
Yeah, anti-Trumper, and he had no apologies for doing so or being one during his concession speech.
It may have cost me an election in this case, but I stand by every one of those decisions to disagree with the president because I didn't think it, at the end of the day, was either concurrent with the promises I made when I first ran for office or the voices of the very people the first district that I represent.
Yeah, so now he'll perhaps have time to go looking for love in South America again.
Did you say love?
And so oddly enough, I spent the last 5 days of my life crying in Argentina so I could repeat it when I came back here.
Because love is real love. Love is true love.
I will be able to die knowing that I had met my soulmate. This was a whole lot more than a simple affair. That it's a love story.
It's a love story.
That
ended badly.
Mark Sanford is a good conservative, but that public spectacle when he was caught having an affair, it was so embarrassing and disqualifying. The only reason he got back to Congress is because there was a special election for Tim Scott's seat when Scott was elevated to U.S. Senate when Jim DeMint retired. And so Sanford won like a 13-way primary.
Right.
So, there's a lot being made of a tweet that Trump said on an election day, taking a shot at Sanford and endorsing his opponent.
Yeah, and he said, Mark Sanford has been very unhelpful to me in my campaign. He is MIA and nothing but trouble. He's better off in Argentina. Oh, ouch. Then he endorsed his competitor, Katie Arrington.
But I don't think that tweet on Election Day was some kind of verbal or digital guillotine. I don't think you give Trump's tweet credit for the Sanford defeat. But it is interesting to note, if you look around the rest of the country, Corey Stewart, who's taken a hard line on immigration, is sort of a Trumpian populist, wins the Republican nomination to face Tim Kaine for the United States Senate seat in November against, and he defeated, I should say, Corey Stewart defeated sort of more of a Rand Paulian libertarian Republican Green Beret named Nick Freitas. And then the problems that Mitt Romney's having in Utah, of all places, even though Trump has endorsed him. And there's probably a lot of Republicans who haven't forgot what Mitt Romney did during the 2016 election. And Romney's struggling against this guy named John Kennedy. Not John Kennedy. His last name is Kennedy. He's got
an impressive resume. We don't need to talk about it.
Well, I know you're a Romney fan, but
Blah, 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 blah.
This guy Kennedy actually defeated Romney in the Republican nominating convention in Utah back in April.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting to posit the question: is the GOP now officially the party of Trump, particularly with his approval ratings inching up? We'll put that question to our friend Tim Carney, who's a senior political columnist for the Washington Examiner, WashingtonExaminer.com. Tim, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So what about that, the party of Trump now?
Yes, and I don't know that I would have said that after the election day. I would have said this is a guy who won an election, but you have the stories you just told. You had Congresswoman Martha Roby, who was outspokenly critical of Trump.
Yeah.
I don't even know if she criticized him after he came into office, but because she criticized him heavily and publicly after the Access Hollywood tape came out, with him, bragging about the ways in which he sexually assaults women. When that came out, she was so critical, and that was used against her, and she was forced into a runoff. And so for an incumbent like Sanford to lose his election, for an incumbent like Roby to be forced into a runoff, for such a prominent politician like Romney to have trouble, and the root cause of all of these seems to be being too critical of Trump. And so what does that mean? It means no party ever really stands for just ideas in the way that, say, our editorial page at the Washington Examiner can do, or, you know, a think tank scholar can do. Parties always compromise, deviate, sell out, do all that. But now there's a party that simply stands for a man and doesn't even sort of claim to stand for ideas. That the way to be a Republican, and some people even say the way to be a conservative, is to support the president. And I don't think we've seen a party go this far in that direction in recent history.
Well, I think it's great that the base of the Republican Party is starting to align themselves with President Trump. But in the case of Mitt Romney, those two have kissed and made up. I mean, he interviewed him to be the possible Secretary of State. So I don't know why. Is there something else going on in Utah that we don't know?
No, I mean, Romney is pretty popular among the Utah Republican establishment. They have liked him. They think he won't have any trouble winning in November. But I do think what's happened was that sometime between when Trump secured the nomination and then the general election, and then again in the first year of Trump, over those sort of 18 months, or even you could say, you know, from when the 12 months from when he secured the election to when he had been in office for 5 months, the conservative Republican base that was across the country that was very skeptical of Romney in the primaries came around to him. He gave us Neil Gorsuch. He got the right enemies was a big part of it. The media absolutely hating him for so much of the Republican base, that identity politics, the culture war of fighting against these guys who seem to hate middle America. That's what it was, with Trump being so thoroughly hated. I just think that's what it is, that when Romney criticizes Trump, he sounds like Jim Acosta of CNN who's criticizing Trump, and that
well. And Romney recently came out and said he wrote in his wife Ann Romney for president, which I think he could have just kept that to himself. And that was what a lot of Utah did. I mean, if none of the above had been on the ballot, its best state would have been Utah. Romney, Trump, remember, got less than 50% in the election, but I think you would see. If Trump were on the ballot today, he would do a lot better in Utah. That a lot of the conservative base, including sort of some of the religious conservative base, that was very averse and skeptical of Trump, has come around to him. Now, the question for me, as a guy who cares about ideas, is will they follow him anywhere? Will they follow him to unconservative places? Whether it's, trade is one thing, then you go further and spending. And obviously the base followed George W. Bush on big spending. And then if Democrats take over Congress, what happens then? Does Trump try to cut deals with the Democrats? If that happens, and they're definitely sort of Chuck Schumer-ish deals, what does the Republican base do at that point? It could get very interesting.
Well, here's the thing with Romney, though, too. I mean, he's sort of the quintessential politician that a lot of the base of the party is rejecting through experience with such. I mean, Romney, how many states is this guy from? This is a guy who who got into. I mean, I know he had a successful business career, obviously, but he got into politics because he wanted to be something. And the perception is Donald Trump got into politics because he wants to do something, and he's doing things. And you might not like everything, but you're going to like a lot of it if you're from a center-right perspective. And so, boy, that's a pretty easy choice for most Republicans, even conservatives, to make. And in terms of this kind of their blind loyalty is required. You have Republicans criticizing Trump on trade. You have people that can stand on their own 2 feet in the Freedom Caucus, the Jim Jordans and the Mark Meadowses of the world. So this is not some kind of a Kool-Aid cult here.
No, but I think they don't criticize him. This is something we do in Washington Examiner. We bring in politicians all the time, and one of the things we've asked basically every one of them is, are there ways in which Trump makes your job harder? And basically none of them, whether you had Mike Lee from Utah or Thomas Massey, who's incredibly forthcoming, he's a congressman from Kentucky, or any of these guys, moderates, conservatives to Trumpers, none of them are willing to criticize the president. And Sanford was an exception. One reporter tweeted out that they're going to miss Sanford because he was a guy you could walk up to in the hallway and he would actually say what he was thinking, which is not the way most politicians do.
How many?
There's all sorts of things they won't do, and most Republicans won't criticize Trump. And when he does, if he does, deviate immensely from the conservative line, or if he does, says things that just any good person should object to, I think it's dangerous to have a president who the party is afraid to criticize.
Well, yeah, but I mean, is it fear or is it a political expediency in advance of the midterms when you have his numbers bumping up and you have some fears not being realized, such as what happened with the California primary, where these 7 seats that were supposed to be part of the blue wave don't look like they're going to be part of the blue wave, and so the prospects of this guaranteed takeover of the House by Nancy Pelosi and crew doesn't look so guaranteed at the present time.
Well, I'm going to be more pessimistic and say that I think it's sort of a ratchet that only goes the wrong way. That being against Trump can hurt you, but I don't think being with Trump will help you. One thing to remember is in the 2016 election, Donald Trump didn't really outperform any Senate candidates in any of the competitive states. He outperforms the average Republican in Kentucky and West Virginia, and that's about it. Even in Pennsylvania, where he did much better, obviously, than McCain or Romney before him, Pat Toomey, the senator there, got more votes, got a higher percentage of the vote than Trump did. And, you had a similar phenomenon in places like Michigan and Wisconsin, where he's not dragging up candidates. It's just he drags them down in a primary if they disagree with him. Here would be, and he also, I think, drags down Republicans in some of the the highly educated places, in Northern Virginia, in the North Shore, there in Chicago. Those places he drags down Republicans, but then you go to these blue-collar rural places. Is he going to give any boost to Republicans there? Maybe he will, but we haven't seen it.
Right, but I mean, I can see the point that his coattails or lack thereof are uneven across the fruited plains, but I mean, to compare it to 2016 is sort of a difficult thing to do because so much has changed. I mean, this changes on a daily basis. His numbers aren't where they were 3 weeks ago, and in part because the American people are supportive of him in some areas, overwhelmingly supportive of him. Even just for example, like the summit he just had with Kim Jong-un, that was something that was popular, even if people are skeptical of how productive it will be.
And so, can he convey that to congressional Republicans? He's the economy obviously is doing great, and at the Examiner we had an editorial saying the best thing Trump is doing is getting the government out of the way. He's acting like a conservative. He's not trying to boost it in the way we feared he is. He's cutting taxes and reducing regulations and letting the economy grow the economy. And so I think that will help Trump if this continues into 2020. So will it help Republicans in the midterm to have passed the tax cut bill and to be on Trump's side? That's what I'd be looking for right now to see. If Trump's helping the party, it will show up that Republican members of Congress, incumbents, are getting credit for the strong economy.
All right. He is Tim Carney, senior political columnist for the Washington Examiner, WashingtonExaminer.com. Tim, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Amy.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.